In 1968, my father was appointed Argentina's ambassador to Ireland. And one of his first official actions was the Argentine Navy ship, an Argentine Navy training ship called Fragata Libertad, docked at Dublin port for an extended stay. This was a Navy training ship that did a tour of the world, stopping one day at a different, for a single day in different ports to train the Navy graduates. But Ireland was an important stop, differently, and that's why it stayed such a long time, because the founder of Argentina's Navy in the early 1800s had been an Irishman. So honors would be rendered by the Navy officers in Ireland. The sail ship, I spent a lot of time with these young Navy school graduates, around 21, 22, 23, they must have been at that time, and the officers commanding them. We had an official embassy reception for them at home. There were informal meals at my home for the graduates, and there was a trip to the town of Foxford, County Mayo, birthplace of Admiral William Brown. To my horror, I was around, 14, 15 at that time? To my horror, confident that they were in a safe space, the talk of these Navy graduates and their commanding officers often turned to: ¿Cuánta gente tenemos que matar en la Argentina para arreglar el asunto? How many people do we have to kill in Argentina to set things right? Some of them said 10,000, some said 100,000. This was before the guerrilla groups had got into full swing. They were not talking about a guerrilla threat. They were fixated rather on correcting what to them was what they saw as historical and religious wrongs. It was only the rise of the small guerrilla groups in the early 1970s that finally provided these misty-headed military with the excuse needed to start their long-cherished mass murder campaign. And it was a campaign aimed not at the few hundred guerrillas who participated in armed confrontations, but at the tens of thousands of young, peaceful citizens that the military truly wished to exterminate. Intellectuals, journalists, psychologists, for some reason, writers, students, labor leaders, Jews, anyone who didn't conform to their image of a Western and Christian Argentina. Last year, I finally obtained something that I had spent decades looking for. You can imagine my obsession, and if not, I'll tell you what it was. On the webpage of a small Madrid bookshop, I finally found a booklet printed by the Argentine Navy commemorating this sail ship's 1968 tour. And it had what I was looking for: a full list of every graduate and officer on board. And there they were, when I got the names, a host of future perpetrators at the Navy ESMA camp, the Navy ESMA death camp, which was probably the biggest death camp in Argentina. About 5,000 people were killed at the ESMA, including a handful who have been sentenced for crimes against humanity, all guests at my former Dublin home. Jorge Vildosa, the officer who masterminded the death flights out of the ESMA and appropriated for himself and his wife a newborn baby from a pregnant woman that they murdered after she gave birth. They did that. Since they mostly captured young people, there were lots of pregnant young women that they captured. About 500, it is estimated. They kept him alive till they gave birth. Then they killed him, and Vildosa grabbed the baby for himself and his wife. So he's not only on the list, but then I remembered, Dublin being very small at the time, whenever we had a do or a reception at the Argentine embassy, a photographer from the newspaper would come along. And I remembered, I think for the Fragata Libertad. And my father had a cutting. So I found the newspaper article, a magazine article actually, in which Vildosa, this man who masterminded the death flights and who stole the baby, there's a photo of him standing in the reception hall at home, my mother next to him. His name correctly spelt in the caption by the Irish journalist, Jorge Vildosa. Now, Vildosa was one of the few who managed to escape prosecution because he escaped to London. He spent a long time in London, and then he fled to South Africa, where he apparently died some time ago.